Welcome to a special episode of our podcast. This is the very first episode I recorded, and it didn't fit to what we wanted to do. So for almost 2 years, I didn't release it. But after our latest chat with Sue Elvis, where we talked about how we wanted to back then start our podcast, it came to me that it wouldn't be fair towards Brendan Kane, who gave his time to do an interview, that I never released it. I am deeply fascinated by how marketing works. It is my profession. This is what I do. And Brendan is a guy that really understands this a lot. So I reached out to him because he wrote somewhere that he said yes to podcast interviews to however big or small people's podcasts were. And we didn't have a podcast, but I was like, okay, maybe that's a way to provoke myself to start. So I wrote to him and he answered back. And then I actually had to do the recording, and I was scared shitless when I did the recording. I was nervous and I didn't fit it into what we actually wanted to do with our podcast back then. But as I say, at the same time, Brendan gave his time. He come with so many good views for people on how to work with social media and marketing. He is very knowledgeable. I have learned a lot from him, and I want to honor the time he gave me to share it with you. So this is why I made this little introduction, to let you know that, yeah. And it's my own, insecurity. I'm like, I'm probably nervous and stumble over the words. But time has passed. Now we have done more than 75 episodes, and I today don't take it so seriously. I could use what Brendan said. I learned a lot from him. This is a special episode that we will release. So if anyone out there are working with marketing or is promoting something, this is a step in my learning journey. I've learned a lot from both his books, and I recommend you listen to it, and I hope you will enjoy it. And please forgive me if I stumble and cannot speak properly or whatever. I was damn nervous. So yes, thanks a lot. And here with the introduction, let's turn back the time back to, I think it was August 2022, where I had the pleasure of interviewing Brendan. And then first, more than half a year later, we released our ever first episode of the podcast, which is a podcast we do together. We are always me and Cecilia. And if there's anything else, we release them as these specials. So yes, please enjoy. I hope you will like it and that you will learn a lot. Thank you. Enjoy. Okay, welcome to a podcast about how to handle life outside the box. We speak with people who fascinate us, people we can learn from. Along the way, we also share our own story of how we became a full-time traveling family. Our goal is to create this podcast we ourselves would have loved to listen to on our travels and on our way to create the life we have today. And today we have invited Brendan Kane, who is the author of the two books, 1 Million Followers, How I Built a Massive Social Following in 30 Days. And his latest book is called Hook Point, How to Stand Out in a 3-Second World. We have invited Brendan to talk, as I am deeply fascinated with marketing, but mostly the things about marketing I really love is to think about what lies behind, what makes people trigger the way they do, what makes them react. And one person who knows a lot about this is Brendan. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jesper. It's a pleasure to connect with you and everybody that's tuning into this.
I would love to start, for the people who don't know you. I have I can shortly tell that one of the ads worked on me. One of the ads on the social media, I saw one of your ads, and I was like, oh, 1 million followers in 30 days. That sounds incredible. And I started researching a little. And now I've ended up with both books. And can you tell me a little about the ads you have created for the 1 million followers and how you have done it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty complex question, because we probably tested hundreds of ads over, 3 years of
Yeah.
promoting those books. And so kind of there's some layers to it. That's why it's complex. So my second book is called Hook Point: How to Stand Out in a 3-Second World. And a hook point is really designed to stand out at the highest levels.
Yeah.
So when we talk about like 1 million followers as a book, how I built a massive social audience in 30 days, that's the core hook. That's the thing that grabs the attention. But within that hook, you can express it many different ways. You can just do a photo of the book cover. You can do a video. You can talk about the application of it, a case study, how social media is evolving or changing or gaining power, how social influencers are made. So the way that I kind of look at designing ads for our books or for any other project that we're working on is initially, what's the fundamental baseline of the hook that's going to help us stand out? And then what is the best way to contextualize that hook? How do we express it in different ways, and test those to see what really drives the most impact?
And you do this with a lot of A/B testing on the ads, I know. I can understand. And I remember the first time I met A/B testing was on the subject lines for emails. And I found it really fun. It's a fun learning experience about what makes people act. And also, I remember I used a lot of time thinking about, okay, why did it actually do this? Because sometimes, I've written a subject line and I thought that would be the winner, and it didn't work. So when you sit and work with all these, I think you, in one of your books, mentioned you tested 300 different layouts, text, images, or small tweaks. It could be a color. How do you work with it on the psychological level? Do you go in and say, I think this word works better, or do you just pump out a lot and analyze it? What is how do you do it?
Yeah, so we have two different processes. We have one that's designed for paid, which is really direct response, lead generation, conversion-based marketing, and then we have organic side. And we can talk about both today. But from a paid perspective, yes, you want to test as much as you can, but you want to have informed tests. You want to have clear hypotheses around what you're testing and why you're testing it. Because if you're just testing for the sake of volume and something works, then you really don't understand why it works. So every time we're creating a test, an A/B test, we're doing it with intent. So there's an element that we want to test to see if it impacts performance. So some of that is guided by experience. Some of that is guided by research of studying other ads and other segments and other brands and things of that nature. And then there's also a big component of the subconscious communication. Like, how are we contextualizing our message based upon how people perceive the world in different ways? So we have a communication algorithm that we use that's based on 1.5 million communication assessments done worldwide. And what it does is it shows us the 6 different ways that people perceive content and perceive brands. And it's basically broken down into a mathematical formula. So the largest subset of the population, 30%, is feeling based. So they're going to connect and make a decision based upon how it makes them feel. They want an emotional connection to the product, the brand, the creator. The second largest subset of the population is fact-based. That's 25%. It's not about feelings and emotion to them. It's about, does this make sense? They want data, timeframes, information, who, what, when, where, why. That's how they make decisions. The third largest subset of the population is fun-based. It's 20%. So they want to know it's fun, it's exciting, it's stimulating to make that decision. 10% is values-based. So they want to know, can I trust you? Are you dedicated? Are you committed to my success? Another 10% is imagination. They reflect on the world. So the best analogy I could give you is Albert Einstein. If you do research on him, he would spend hours on end staring out in the window, reflecting on everything that he was studying, everything, all the information he was collecting. And then the smallest subset, 5%, is action-based. So they don't think, they don't feel, they just move. They want to go, they want to move fast. They want the bottom line, they want the best. So the perfect analogy of that is if you've ever seen Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible, he's not thinking, he's not feeling, he's not having fun, he's just going. So we layer that on in the respect of, are we connecting with the largest part of the population? So typically we say focus on the big three: feelings, facts, and fun, because that represents 75% of the population. So when we're running tests, when we're constructing ads, we're also perceiving it through that lens to ensure that it's actually resonating. So Pixar actually uses this in all of their movies and their ads. So if you go to a Pixar movie like Inside Out, they have characters designed for each way that people perceive content and perceive the world.
That it's wonderful and wild at the same time. And one of the things that people like us who are these full-time travelers, I sometimes have the debate with my wife. It's like she's asking me, why aren't we on Instagram and why aren't we on Facebook and YouTube? And part of me thinks we are, because for me, it's kind of research that I love to study the different channels. What can you do there? But it's also a way of giving back to the people who came before us, who were inspiring us on our travels. But I will probably never get my wife to say yes to me making ads on, hey, come and look at our unschooling lifestyle. And I see a lot of people on the social media who are in this mix where they share their life, but it's not commercialized. And I'm a little in doubt if the same techniques somehow can be used, because my wife is blogging and she has been writing articles about having your children at home and unschooling for more than 10 years. But it's not with a commercial angle. But on the same time, I feel like, okay, you have used 2 to 3 hours to write it. You have used more time to think about it. Why not get it out to as many people as possible? But can some of the techniques you're presenting and are talking about in your books and in your work be used for non-commercial entities?
100%, it can be. I mean, content is content. An ad is a piece of content, organic piece of content is content. So it's, and I would say that your wife is probably has that viewpoint, and rightly so, because she's seen so many bad ads.
Oh yes.
And that kind of turns people off, because, and what I mean is, a bad ad, you can clearly see that they are selling you something. Versus a good ad is they are reaching out to you, connecting with you, and trying to help you solve a problem that you are facing in everyday life. So the principles still apply. Is what is the effective story that I'm using to personally connect with this individual on the other side of the screen, whether it's selling a product or just entertaining them? Because even if you're doing Instagram or YouTube or TikTok or Facebook organically, at the end of the day, your content is the product. It still has to engage and entertain that individual. Otherwise, they're going to scroll past it, because what essentially you're selling them on from an organic content perspective is their time. And because there's so much content out there, you have to subtly convince them, hey, you should stop and watch this piece of content because it's going to provide value. In the same way an ad does it to say, I think you should stop and check out this product because it's going to add value into your life. So there's obviously big differences, but there's a lot of commonalities between the two as well.
Yeah, and I know neither me and my wife will, do all the dancing videos on Instagram, but I think it could be valuable for the people listening to hear some of your thoughts about from the book Hook Point, with the 3 seconds we have and stuff like that, because I have read the book, but a lot of them probably hasn't. I would love them to read it. So if you can tell about what you've figured out about how you need to stand out in this world we have.
Well, it's first starting by defining the world that we live in. So I started in social media around 2005. And at that time, there's probably about 1 million people on these platforms.
Yeah.
Today, there's 4 billion people on social media. So there's so much content, there is so much competition for attention, that your first job as a content creator is, how do I just get somebody to stop the scroll? Or how do I get somebody to click to watch my piece of content?
Yeah.
Because if you cannot achieve that, then you can't get to your message. And that's also the first signal to an algorithm that your content is not worth distributing to the masses. And there's a lot of myths about the algorithms, one being that they suppress your reach on purpose to get you to pay for reach. And that makes no sense at all, because then nobody would ever go viral. In addition, again, we are these platforms' product. Without us, they don't have a business. But because they have billions and billions of pieces of content to choose from, and as we all know, when we open up the feed, there's only so many pieces of content they can serve to us. They can't serve us 1 billion pieces of content to choose from. They got to serve up 5, 10, 15 for us to engage. They're looking for content that can grab attention and hold attention for as long as possible with the widest possible audience. So our first job as content creators is, how do we win that attention in the first 3 seconds? Now, when I say how to stand out in a 3-second world for my book, it's not that we can't hold attention for as long as possible, because we can. Because you look at like Netflix, people will binge watch a series over a weekend, or they'll listen to a 2-hour podcast.
Oh, yes.
So it's not that we can't hold attention. It's just because there's so much choice out there of content to engage with, our first job is to just get people to stop in those first few seconds to let us demonstrate that we are telling a story, or we are storytellers or content creators or brands that are worth spending more time with.
Yeah. One question I have for you, and it's the subject which is often on our mind as our kids are unschooled, and we have been looking a lot into the educational system and all this is, I tried to figure out your background. I've listened to some of the podcasts. I should have taken a sneak peek on your LinkedIn. But how much of what you know today, Brendan, is self-taught, and how much come from you being on an actual education?
99.9% is self-taught. And I don't say 100% because certain things in school teach you fundamentals to kind of set you up. But all the things that I am talking about, I didn't learn in school. But obviously, the fundamentals of schooling allows you to understand how to learn and process things and things like that. But from the content that we're talking about today, it was all self-taught.
Yeah. But how do you, I mean, you have moved from the 1 million followers books to, I presume, seeing, okay, there's something about the hook points and I need to know more about that. It's, when I look at you from the side and the interviews, I'm thinking it's a passion for this area that drives you. But how do you determine what's the next book, or what's, I don't know, maybe the right question is, what interests you now? What is the new book going to be about? Is there natural development from where you have, from the followers, the A/B testing, all that, to understand, looking in and researching the hook points, how that works? What are you focusing on now?
Yeah, so there's 2 questions in there.
Yeah.
One, how do I choose the subjects that I focus on? And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier with ads and things, is what is the biggest problem that I can solve that I have expertise in? So that's, when I'm constructing a hook point, or constructing a book or an ad, I'm coming from the standpoint of what is the biggest problem that I can help other people solve with the knowledge that I have access to. In terms of what we're focusing on now, we're launching a new guide to going viral that breaks down our process. We have a viral content engineering process of creating content for social media that's backed by 60 billion views, 100 million followers, and $1 billion in revenue for the projects that we worked on. And the core crux of that process is research and insights. And what that means is, if you want to be successful in anything, this isn't just social media, but with going viral, with mastering social media, you need to study how others are successful and understand how others are successful. Now, the blessing and the curse of social media is that you can open up this platform, click a button, and post a piece of content. Yeah. It's a blessing because it's so easy, but it's a curse because it's so easy that most people don't put any thought into it. They think, oh, I'm just going to post something and it's going to go viral. But again, like anything in life, and you know this from being in marketing for many years, you have to study the elements that drive success. So we have a research process that mines data on the top viral content creators, formats, brands, and breaks down why it's going viral so that you can apply those principles to your content. And the things that we break down are not really the message. It's not what they're talking about. Yep. It's about how they're talking about it. So we look at these nuances. We have over 50 different performance indicators that we look at. And it's like, some of them are like pacing, tonality, editing, the first 3 seconds, titles, captions, thumbnails. It's all the context of how they're telling their story, not really about the message themselves. And, you know, you had mentioned previously as though me and my wife don't want to do dancing videos. Well, we have found content creators in every segment that are going viral: tax accountants, insurance, real estate, doctors. So that's where you can find examples in any type of subject matter. And again, we don't pay attention to the content itself. So like we could break down, for example, a real estate agent and break down the nuances that are making them go viral and apply it to your channel of traveling. It's not like you have to look at the exact people that are doing the same thing as you, because again, it's about how they're telling their stories and the nuances that are for that. So what we've done is we've created a private community called Viral Trends, where every week we're breaking down the latest research. So we get on a live call, walk through the research of a influencer, a brand, a content format, and explain these nuances of why it's going viral. Give you our actual research, give you an activation guide to break it down further on how to apply it into your content. Yep. So that's the big focus for us. And again, it comes out of a problem that we're solving is most people in creating social media don't understand why things go viral. They talk about just overarching trends. And the problem with just looking at overarching trends is that it's like the iceberg analogy. Is like, if you ever see the image of an iceberg analogy, you can type it into Google, but you only see the tip of the iceberg above the water, and then the rest of it's below. And that's the same thing with trends, is people will look at a trend and they only see the top 1% that are succeeding with it. They don't see the 99% of people that are failing with it. So that's really a big focus for us right now.
Will it turn out to a new book also, or will it more be keeping
potentially?
It
potentially, we've started it, and I can send this guide to you. But we started as Hook Points Guide to Going Viral. So it's about 60-page presentation, and we may turn it into a book. I'll kind of just see how it unfolds. We've got a lot of things that we're working on, but it could be a potential for a book. But books are a little bit difficult because, you know, I live in the social media age where I want to be nimble and move fast and get feedback and modify and change things. And books are not the best medium to achieve that. Books are an amazing medium, but when you're I've driven my
In a
publishers
world
crazy.
that evolve all the time, it's kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
difficult
yeah,
not to update it every month. I
yeah.
don't know. Okay. One interesting thing is the why. I think I heard you talk about it in one of your other interviews, and you also say, when I asked you about your processes, you mentioned that you ask yourself, what is the biggest problem I can help other with solving? And I think that's one of the issues that many content creators on social media don't have, and maybe they haven't solved that part or haven't answered the why. And maybe sometimes because, I feel my my wall on Instagram and Facebook sometimes just like, oh, it's a piece of junk. It's just stuff happening where I miss the quality content from people. And maybe it's because they feel needed to produce so much, or they don't have the why very clear. I got not almost sad, but when you said what is the biggest problem, I was like, oh, have we asked ourselves that when we write content, or do we just write about our own experiences? So how do you work with your clients about the why and the why, that part of it?
Yeah, typically we're not working with clients on the why because they
Okay.
typically know the why. We're working with them on how to express that. And I also want to say is the why can be purely entertainment. It can be putting a smile on somebody's face. As you look at Mr. Beast, one of the most successful influencers on the planet,
Yeah.
and he's providing entertainment value to his clients. The same with movies, and sometimes people need that escape from their everyday life. So that's why I never put down content creators that are doing stuff for that, because it's important for the world.
Yeah.
And I watch a lot of pet content, the good pet content that kind of tells stories or creates characters out of pets, because it gives you kind of that essential break from the end of the day. So your why can be a huge range of things. It doesn't necessarily need to be I'm solving poverty or I'm
No.
solving the environmental movement. It can be that, but you know, to us, the challenge is less about the why. The challenge is more about the how, the context of how they're doing it. Like you're in a space with a traveling family and even education where there's millions of people creating content on the same subject matter. And there's
Yeah.
some that go super viral and a majority that don't. And the difference isn't really the why, the difference is the execution of
That's
how
right.
they're expressing that message.
For people who want to try to break through the wall and find the right people for them, the people who want to hear their message, is it just about putting out content, or there's the different tags and stuff? But yeah, I think what I'm asking is, what is your best advice for people who are just starting out, who wants to see if they can grow a social media following? Because you work very professional with it. So can the same techniques be used for small channels?
Absolutely. And the first place to start is, and I want to preface it by saying social media is like anything in life. It takes time, energy, resources to get good at it. And resources doesn't have to be financial, it can be your time. So
Yeah.
just know going into it, you've got to have the desire and the motivation. This is not something that just comes easy. It takes work. So just know that going into it, that because I will say, you do not have to be on social media to be successful. There are many other ways that you can be successful in life. I have built massive businesses and closed major deals without social
Yeah.
media. Does social media provide an advantage? Is there a huge opportunity? Absolutely. But I am not, even though my business relies on it, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's the only way to be successful, because it's just not true. Um, but if you are wanting to get into it, is, as I mentioned before, you've got to study what makes social media work. Why does one content creator go viral versus another one? And I can definitively tell you it's not because the number of hashtags you use, the type of hashtags, the time of day, the amount of content that you post. It's not because of that. It's because of the content that you create. So it's really become a student of how others are telling stories. What is the difference between, for example, in your case, a travel influencer or a travel family that has millions of followers and somebody that only has thousands of followers, and breaking down those nuances of how they're constructing their content. And that's really the best way to start, is like before even producing a single piece of content, start doing this studying and start making these lists of these things that you think is driving that performance, so that when you create the content, you have a hypothesis of what I'm going to focus on. And then when you create that piece of content, put it side by side with the reference that you analyzed, and really be honest with yourself. Is what did you get right? What is missing? What did you get wrong? So to me, that's the best way to start, is really slow down before you speed up.
Yeah. And if people want to get started, one of my recommendations would be to get both of your books. But if they want to learn more from you, what is the best way to do that? How can they, what do you have to offer them, to say it like that?
Yeah, so I would say the most cost efficient way is our new community that we launched, where we're delivering these research and insights on a weekly basis. And they can go to goviral.hookpoint.com. If they want to engage us directly, they can just go to hookpoint.com and schedule a call with our team to discuss. But those are really the two different ways, in addition to the books. I would just say that our community goes a level deeper, where it's like every week we're updating what's going on, why this is working. Because as we talked about, social media is constantly evolving. Our books still hold up. It's just in the community we can go a level deeper than we can in the books that we have published.
And with your own personal background, why did you end up being an expert in social media? What happened that drove you down that road? Because you seem to me like a person who loves analyzing. That it sounds like that is part of what drives you, with all the work you do there. So how did it ended up being social media? That is your big thing now.
It was because of a hook point. So I went to film school. I wanted to be a film producer, and I showed up in LA in 2005. And like everybody else, I started at the bottom, making coffee, copies, deliveries. And when people would ask me, why did I move to LA? Predominantly the people I wanted to connect with when I had a chance, like studio executives, directors, and producers. And I said I wanted to be a film producer. I could just see everybody's eyes glaze over, because I was one of a million. I wasn't standing out. So I had to take a step back and really analyze what is a problem that I can solve. And I just noticed for the studios that I worked for, that every time we completed a film, we would invest tens of millions of dollars to produce a single piece of content. And then we were going to invest tens of millions of dollars to market this piece of content. And then on top of that, we needed hundreds of millions of people around the world to know about this piece of content in a matter of months. So there was a real sense of anxiety that would overcome the studio whenever we had a new film that was about to go to market.
It's a big investment.
And while I was going to college, I created a few internet companies just to really experiment and learn what it takes to run a business. So recognizing that level of stress and anxiety over the studio, I just started approaching those same people, directors, studio executives, actors, producers, and said, hey, listen, I know how to tap into these online audiences, these digital audiences, for a fraction of the cost, in some cases no cost at all, compared to what we were spending on television, print, and radio, and that it was scalable to get our message out. And that's what really took me from making coffee to building digital divisions. And then as I was doing that, I just saw larger growth opportunity in the social media and digital space than the film career specifically for myself.
Yeah. And are you now, all the knowledge you have gained since you started down this road, are you going outside again from the social media and moving back into the film world? Do you have any ambition about using what you have learned here on that, or will you still stay in this realm of the online marketing on social media platforms?
I have friends and partners that are still in the film industry, and I will help them from time to time on their projects. But the challenge I have with that industry is it's so ego driven that they say they want to innovate, they say they want to change, but every time I go in there and talk to them, they don't.
Okay.
And I have, to me, I've worked with some of the biggest corporations, movie studios, celebrities on the planet. To me, I could care less about the level that you're at and more about the mindset that you have. That's what excites me. So if I have an opportunity to work on a film where the mindset is like, listen, we really want to figure this out, we'll really take your advice, implement it, then absolutely. But I don't seek it out at this point. In addition, we work with solopreneurs that are just starting out, or pre-revenue companies. And we can be excited about working with them because of the mindset that goes into it, because there's a clear distinction on the projects that we have success and don't have success working on. And it is all about the mindset of the individual on the other side of the table.
Yeah. I was thinking, what keeps driving you, Brendan? Because a lot of people, when I look at you from the side, and I look at the books, I'm like, he must have succeeded in creating that a big, good turnaround. So I presume you are okay financially set. So that is in order. So what is it that keeps motivating you to work with this area?
I mean, I love learning and I love sharing what I learn. So that's what drives me. And I don't know that I will ever be a person that just sits on the beach in retirement. And it's interesting. I've heard stories of very successful people that, at an older age retire, and then their health significantly declines. And some of them even pass away suddenly. So for me, it's learning, and there's still levels of success that I have the desire to achieve. So I haven't reached the level of success that I want to. So that drives me as well. But again, it's learning how things work, and then once I learn how those things work, is sharing that information with others to help them in pursuing their goals.
And you said the next step of what you're exploring now is what makes stuff viral. Can you give some pointers on what is it that makes stuff viral? Because when I think about some of the things you're saying, I'm looking at it and say, my wife is a trained psychologist, I need to say, and that is wonderful on many levels. But it gives me an angle where I look at stuff and look at the humanity behind the screen and what people react to. And is there some psychological aspects you look at when you look at the virality? Is there some common areas where you say, oh, that's just people and that's how they react and that why they like that piece of content? I know I lay many questions. I should be better at just asking one. So
again, it's so nuanced. Like we, before jumping on this, we just had a call for our Viral Trends community, and we were breaking down a very specific format on TikTok of people giving money to strangers.
Yeah, I've seen some of those. Yeah.
Yeah. So we looked at, and this is a big part of our process. So we have a gold, silver, bronze process. So within that format, we looked at the gold, which is the highest performers, which was about 20 to 70 million views. And then we look at silver, which is the average performance, which is like 1 to 3 million views. And then we looked at bronze, which was, 30,000 to like 400,000 views. And what we do is we create hypotheses by looking at the gold of what we think is driving it, of the success, these nuanced details. But then we have to analyze the silver and the bronze, the underperformers, to see if those hypotheses show up there. Because if they do, then we know it's not the reason driving that success.
And it's people doing the same thing. So you
take the same format. They're just doing it in different ways. So that's again, the trend is you could say, oh, because you've seen viral videos of people giving money to strangers.
Absolutely.
Oh, this is the trend. So we're just going to do it and we're going to go viral. But again, that's the iceberg analogy, is you're only seeing the tip of it. You're not seeing all the other people. So it was very clear the gold performers, the high performers, they were doing a few things. One, the entire content was about the person that they were giving the money to.
Yes.
What was their reaction? What did they do? Versus the underperformers, it was all
focused
about the
on
person.
themselves. Yeah.
Look at what I'm doing. I'm giving money away to this person.
And that's the videos that annoys the hell out of me.
Yeah, but it's a very subtle distinction that most people would not recognize. However, it drove performance. There was another thing, is that some of the high performers, what would happen is they would give the money to the person, and then that person would give the money to somebody else right afterwards. So there was layers to the story. It wasn't just about this person getting money. It was what they did afterwards. And what we really kind of narrowed in from a storytelling perspective is the high performers. It wasn't a story about giving away the money. It was a story about humanity and what it means to connect with another person and to help that other person. Versus the low performers, or again, was people just trying to jump on the trend and say, hey, I'm going to go and give money to these people so that I can look good on camera and try and capitalize off of this trend. So, but again, there's so much, I don't sit here and say, and this is the difficult part with social media, is people are looking for broad answers to apply to anything. When it's so nuanced based upon the story you're telling, the platform you're telling it on, the length of the content, your message, and things of that nature. So that's why we're so focused on this research and insights direction.
That and here TikTok and the whole concept that things are trending and people copy paste it to see if it works for them, that might give a massive amount of material to look at, because as you say, it's the same thing they're doing.
But again, is like when we're looking at something, we're not just looking at the ones that are successful. We're looking at the ones that are not successful, so that you can clearly create the delineation. Because that's the problem with trends, is people are only looking at the 1% and they think, oh, if I just give money away to other people, I'm going to be successful. When they're not seeing the underlying principles that are driving that top 1%, because they don't see the other 99% failing at it.
How have you built up your team, Brendan? Because there must go a lot of research into it. Is it self-taught people like yourself, or have you been out finding trained researchers? So
we train everybody internally. So I don't know that we have found anybody that knows this stuff. We find people with the right mindset that we train on how to do this research.
Wow. Yeah, I find it very interesting with our perspective on the world, with the whole unschooling, because for us it is when our kids are passionate about something, we just let them run with it. And seeing you saying that almost 99% of what you know today is stuff you have been dedicated to figure out and have learned for yourself, that makes super much sense. And it also reminds me of, I talked with my dad back in the days about career, and he said to me, You don't know if to take an education, you can do that, but you don't know how the world looks in 20 years when you are, or 7 years when you are finished. Just do what you want. And we have done that. So Brendan, I think I've covered what I really wanted to hear about. So I will just invite people to go check out both your books, but also go viral.hookpoint.com. And I would like to thank you a lot for your time.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure connecting with you and everybody that was tuning into this.
Thank you.